Welcome to Catalin Moore Reports. I'm Catalin Moore. For over a century, the skyline of New York City has been more than just a feat of engineering. It has been the world's most potent symbol of capital, ambition, and global dominance. To have a headquarters here was to tell the world you had arrived. But today, if you walk through the canyons of Midtown Manhattan, the air feels different. The frantic energy of the boardroom hustle has been replaced by a haunting quiet. The lights in the upper floors of some of the most iconic skyscrapers in the world are staying dark. What we are witnessing isn't just a post-pandemic slump or a temporary market correction. We are witnessing the great corporate exodus, a mass migration of wealth, talent, and power that is threatening to hollow out the very core of the Empire City. The data is staggering. For the first time in modern history, the capital of the world is losing its grip. Fortune 500 giants, the bedrock of the city's tax base, are packing their bags. They aren't just moving across the river to New Jersey, they are fleeing to the Sun Belt, Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. This isn't a trickle, it's a flood. And the trigger for this latest, most aggressive wave of departures, it can be traced back to a single, seismic shift in the city's political landscape in late 2025. In November 2025, New York City elected a new administration on a platform that promised a radical reimagining of the urban social contract. The promise was simple: expanded public services, universal social equity programs, and a massive overhaul of the city's infrastructure. But the price tag was equally massive. To fund this vision, the proposed solution was a series of aggressive tax hikes and new levies specifically targeting the city's highest earners and largest corporations. For the progressive movement, it was a victory for the people. For the boardroom executives at the city's top firms, it was a final warning shot. The resulting uncertainty has paralyzed the business community. In the world of high finance and global commerce, the one thing more feared than a high tax rate is an unpredictable one. When a corporation cannot forecast its tax liability over a 5-year horizon, it stops investing. And in New York, they haven't just stopped investing, they've started leaving. But taxation is only the tip of the iceberg. The driving factors behind this exodus are structural and deeply rooted. First, there is the crushing regulatory burden. New labor laws, while designed to protect workers, have added layers of compliance complexity that smaller firms find impossible to navigate. Environmental mandates, though noble in intent, have turned the cost of maintaining Manhattan real estate into a liability rather than an asset. Then, there is the permanent shift in the way we work. The rise of hybrid and remote models has stripped the Manhattan office of its necessity. Why pay $100 per square foot for a desk in a skyscraper when your most talented software engineers are working from a home office in Austin or a beach house in Boca Raton? The prestige of a 212 area code is fading, replaced by the cold, hard logic of the balance sheet. Executives often speak of a hostile business perception. There is a growing sense among the elite that the city government no longer views them as partners in New York's success, but as ATMs to be tapped for social experiments. This psychological shift is perhaps more dangerous than the taxes themselves. When the leaders of industry feel unwanted, they look for suitors elsewhere, and states like Florida and Texas are more than happy to play the role of the welcoming host. The numbers tell a story of two different Americas. In New York City, the combined state and city tax rates for high earners can now soar past 14%. In contrast, Florida and Texas have a state income tax of exactly 0%. Let's look at the math for a mid-sized firm with 500 employees. By moving from Manhattan to Boca Raton, that firm can save an estimated $7.5 million per year just in corporate costs and payroll-related taxes. And that's before we even talk about real estate. Office space in Florida's business hubs is often 40% to 60% cheaper than in Manhattan. For a CEO responsible to shareholders, staying in New York is becoming increasingly difficult to justify. As these headquarters vanish, they leave behind more than just empty offices. They leave behind a hole in the city's soul and its wallet. We are seeing a loss of personal income tax from the highest earners, the 1% who traditionally provide nearly 40% of the city's total income tax revenue. When they leave, the tax burden shifts to the middle class, or worse, the city is forced to cut the very services the new administration promised to expand. Property taxes, the lifeblood of municipal funding, are also at risk. Office vacancy rates in Manhattan have hit levels not seen in decades. As major tenants leave, rental rates plunge, and property values follow them down. Landlords are caught in a pincer movement. Their income is falling, but their tax bills are based on valuations from a bygone era. This is the start of an economic feedback loop, a downward spiral where decline begets further decline. As the tax base shrinks, the city's ability to maintain public safety, clean streets, and quality education diminishes. This, in turn, makes the city less attractive to the remaining businesses and residents, prompting more to leave. We are at the precipice of a historic inflection point. New York has faced crises before: the fiscal collapse of the 70s, the aftermath of 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis. But this feels different. This isn't a sudden shock, it's a slow-motion hollowing out. In this investigation, we're going to look past the political talking points. We're going to examine the comparative advantages that are drawing New York's lifeblood away. We're going to look at the real estate crisis that is turning Billionaires Row into a ghost town. And most importantly, we're going to look at the human cost, the service workers, the small business owners, and the middle-class families who are being left behind in a city that is losing its competitive edge. The exodus is real. The consequences are permanent. And the clock is ticking for the greatest city on earth. The exodus isn't just a headline. It is a calculated, cold-blooded mathematical certainty. When corporate boards look at the viability of New York City in 2026, they aren't looking at the lights of Broadway or the charm of Central Park. They are looking at a spreadsheet where the New York premium has become the New York penalty. To understand the depth of this investigation, we have to look at the hard data that is driving these billion-dollar decisions. The primary catalyst is the widening chasm in tax policy. Following the 2025 election, the push for social equity programs led to proposed levies that would push the effective tax rate for high-earning executives and corporations past the 14% threshold. In the world of global finance, that isn't just a high tax, it's an outlier. For a firm like a major hedge fund or a tech conglomerate, staying in Manhattan versus relocating to a pro-business hub like Florida or Texas isn't even a debate. It's a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to leave. Consider the Boca Raton equation. Florida and Texas have a state income tax rate of exactly 0%. For a medium-sized firm with 500 employees, the annual savings on corporate costs, payroll taxes, and administrative overhead by moving to Florida is estimated at roughly $7.5 million. When you scale that up to Fortune 500 company with thousands of employees, the savings enter the hundreds of millions. And that is before we even touch upon real estate. Manhattan office space, once the most sought-after dirt on the planet, now carries a heavy premium that hybrid work models have rendered obsolete. Commercial real estate in Sunbelt hubs is often 40% to 60% cheaper than comparable space in Midtown. But the deep investigation reveals that this isn't just about the money being saved. It's about the feedback loop of economic decline. In New York, the top 1% of earners traditionally contribute nearly 40% of the city's total income tax revenue. As these high-net-worth individuals follow their companies to Florida or Tennessee, the city loses more than just a CEO. It loses the tax base that funds the NYPD, the public school system, and the very social programs the new administration promised to expand. This creates a dangerous cycle. As tax revenue drops, the city is forced to either cut services or raise taxes even further on those who remain. Both options drive more people away. We are seeing this reflected in the brain drain. While the media focuses on the billionaires, the real damage is happening to the middle class. Specialized workers in finance, law, and tech are finding that their career trajectories are no longer tethered to Wall Street. Younger graduates from world-class New York universities are looking at the cost of living versus the quality of life and choosing Austin or Nashville instead. The real estate market is perhaps the most visible indicator of this decay. Manhattan office vacancy rates are hovering at record-breaking, alarming levels. When a major tenant like a global bank leaves a 20-story lease, it doesn't just affect the landlord. It affects the local deli, the catering company, the janitorial services, and the hundreds of small businesses that rely on corporate foot traffic. These service workers, unlike the executives, cannot simply pick up and move to Florida. They are the ones enduring the rising costs of a city in decline with dwindling job opportunities, a human cost that is often underreported in financial journals. Furthermore, the regulatory environment has become increasingly complex. New labor laws and environmental compliance mandates, while well-intentioned, have added a compliance tax that adds millions to operational budgets. Executives report a hostile business perception, feeling that the political climate has pivoted from collaboration to confrontation. In response, states like Texas are launching sophisticated marketing campaigns, directly recruiting New York firms by promising regulatory predictability and a seat at the table. We also have to address the real estate contagion. As property values in Manhattan plunge due to high vacancies, the city's ability to borrow money decreases. Landlords are facing rising tax bills on buildings that are half empty. While there are efforts to convert these office towers into residential apartments, the costs are prohibitive and the zoning hurdles are massive. It is a structural shift that New York's current infrastructure was never designed to handle. The data suggests that if this trend continues, New York will move into what analysts call Phase 2 of urban decline, a commercial real estate collapse that could lead to mortgage defaults and financial contagion reaching far beyond the city limits. The Great Washout isn't just coming. For many sectors, it's already here. The question is no longer whether the exodus is happening, but rather how much of New York will be left when the dust finally settles. So, where does this leave the capital of the world? As we look toward the horizon of 2026 and beyond, the final verdict for New York City isn't just about lost revenue, it's about a lost identity. We are entering a phase of structural transformation, where the city must decide if it will cling to an obsolete 20th century model or reinvent itself for a decentralized future. The worst-case scenario is already being mapped out by economists. If the current trajectory holds, we are looking at a four-wave collapse. The first wave, which we are feeling now, involves major budget shortfalls leading to visible cuts in public safety, education, and the very infrastructure that makes New York functional. The second wave is the commercial real estate black hole, a period where massive mortgage defaults on empty office towers trigger a financial contagion that could destabilize banks far beyond Manhattan. The third wave is perhaps the most tragic, the accelerated talent exodus. When the brain drain reaches the university level and the best graduates from NYU and Columbia immediately board planes for Austin or Nashville, the city loses its future. Finally, the fourth wave is the decline of cultural institutions. Without the corporate sponsorships and the tax-paying middle class, the museums, the theaters, and the vibrant social fabric that define New York's vibrancy begin to fray. However, New York has a history of resilience. The path forward requires policy pragmatism. The city must find a way to balance its progressive social goals with the cold reality of economic competitiveness. This means creating a predictable tax environment where businesses don't feel like they are walking into an ambush every election cycle. It means aggressively reimagining urban space, converting those empty, hollowed-out office towers into residential and mixed-use, live work hubs to combat the housing crisis. New York must also pivot toward emerging sectors like AI, biotech, and green energy, where the density of talent still provides an edge over the low-tax Sunbelt. But these sectors need a city that works. They need safety, reliable transit, and a government that views innovation as an asset, not a target. The Great Corporate Exodus is a warning shot heard around the world. It is a reminder that even the most powerful cities are not immune to the laws of economics. The boardroom doors in Florida are open, and the lights in Texas are bright. If New York City wants to remain the center of the universe, it has to stop acting like it's the only option. The era of the Manhattan monopoly is over. Now, the era of competition has begun. The choice is clear: reform or continue the hollow out. The world is watching to see if the Empire City can strike back or if it will become a museum of what used to be. If you found this investigation helpful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to join our community. I'm Catalin Moore, and I'll see you in the next report.